Real estate today is not what real estate was yesterday. I think that's the most important point to understand. In the modern age, people are empowered. They're empowered with information, they're empowered with technology, they're empowered with marketing channels. So the traditional agent, in terms of their power, has been undermined, and real estate today is now about the new agent. It's supposedly now a new age of real estate, where agents have to step up and provide real value, real consultation, real wisdom to the seller in order to ensure a beneficial contract is concluded at the end of it. And that is not about marketing. That is not about information. It is about the interpretation of information into knowledge and wisdom that the agent can bring to bear on the transaction, once again, to maximize that value. What is the service that we as the industry provide to our clients? Fundamentally, it's about two things. It's about de-risking the process of selling your home. And I think the concept of risk is one that is often not understood or it doesn't even register in sellers' minds. So often I think clients think that real estate is transactional, it's about finding a buyer, it's about signing the documentation and the deal's done. And often that might well be the case. But I think more and more so in today's environment, in today's consumerist environment, in today's challenging environment, the idea of risk needs to be understood. The potential of risk in a transaction needs to be understood, and it's then the agent's responsibility to manage that risk through the transactional period. And bearing in mind that real estate is not about a moment in time. Selling a home is not about a moment in time. Selling a home takes time. You know, as you well know, it could potentially take anything from 2-3 months to 12 months to 24 months, depending on the product category, the property category. So this concept of risk is what the agent needs to own on behalf of the seller. The good agent, and therefore the agent that earns commission on the sale, is the one that takes the risk out of the seller's mind, manages on their behalf towards a successful, hugely rewarding, both emotionally and financially, as a transaction. That's the fundamental role of the agent. And then I think inherent to that is the concept of trust. Because this is a huge financial transaction, probably the biggest financial transaction that most sellers are going to be involved with in their lives. Most, not all, but most. And if you just think about that for a second, this is the biggest financial transaction, it's my largest asset, and I'm asking someone to manage it for me. And in so managing it, surely I would expect certain qualities from that person in order to ensure that they honor this massive asset and the value of that asset as I move through my life and as I move through the transaction. And I think we at Pam Golding Properties, that is something that we really pride ourselves on, because that is where the person, the agent, that's their role in this transaction, is the concept of trust and the concept of asset management and de-risking the transaction as far as the value of that asset is concerned. That is fundamentally what you as a seller should expect from your agent. So when we get onto the concept of technology in the online environment, I think often nowadays in business circles, around the boardroom table, even between buyer and seller and client and agent, the Ubers, the Airbnbs, etc., get bandied around as having disintermediated those industries. But what one's got to understand fundamentally is that those industries are entirely functional. So Uber gets you from point A to point B efficiently. Airbnb gives you accommodation efficiently and easily. What we need to understand about real estate is that it is not a functional, transactional business. It is a business whereby there are two diametrically opposed parties which need to be managed. The one wants to maximize the value on the asset, the other one wants the best deal. And where you're talking hundreds of thousands, millions, tens of millions of rand that needs to be concluded between those two parties, it can't possibly be concluded via the use of technology only. It is the skills of the intermediator and the skills of the property consultant and the wisdom of that consultant that positively manages the tension between these two parties in order to conclude a win-win transaction, whereby the seller has maximized the value of their primary asset and the buyer has acquired one of their primary assets at good value. And that is a very difficult thing to achieve. And that's just on a fundamental level if all things go smoothly. A happy seller and a happy buyer. And there's also this myth of willing buyer, willing seller. Absolutely, you need a willing buyer and a willing seller to close a deal. But that doesn't mean the deal will close. It means I've got a seller who wants to sell their home and I've got a buyer who wants to buy that home. That's the starting point. From that point on, the deal needs to conclude, and the potential complexities that arise in bringing willing buyer, willing seller together is where the real challenge arises in real estate. And with the increasing movement of consumerism, the increasing legislation, the incredibly taxing economy in certain instances, etc., etc., etc. Talk about credit, talk about the banks, but this deal's got to be financed. Just a small issue is there's got to be financial availability between these two to conclude this deal. The potential complexities and the potential risk are immense in bringing willing buyer, willing seller together to actually put pen to paper and conclude that deal. So that is where we as the industry, and particularly in our instance as Pam Golding Properties, where our true wisdom and skill is brought to bear. Not only functionally and transactionally, but emotionally. And one must understand, and no doubt all sellers will agree, that when you have to have a reason to be selling your home, and I think often those reasons are stressful. They might be exciting, but there's always a degree of stress, and often the stress is extreme. We talk about the D's of real estate, whether they are divorce or debt or distress, etc., etc. And often sellers are having to deal with incredibly high emotional states. And one doesn't want to be negotiating in that particular state. One wants someone by one side to assist and travel through this journey